What's up, everybody, and welcome to NFL Nexus. Today, we are diving deep, really deep, into one of the biggest deals of the entire NFL offseason, Alec Pierce's absolutely massive contract extension with the Indianapolis Colts. Now, on the surface, the story they sold us was all about loyalty, right? A player choosing his heart over the highest bidder. But if you peel back just one layer, what you find is a masterclass in strategy, a high-stakes game of financial chess, and maybe, just maybe, the birth of a whole new way of looking at money in the NFL. This wasn't just a signing, this was a statement, and it could change how the league values its biggest stars forever. So before we get into it, if you love this kind of deep dive NFL content, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and drop a comment with your thoughts. Oh, and if you want to help support the channel, we've got some awesome coloring books for fans of any age. You can check them out using the link in the description or the QR code on your screen. All right, let's get into it.
So, the story for the public, the official narrative, it starts right here. The ink is barely dry on this life-changing contract, and Alec Pierce gives everyone the perfect soundbite. You can't write it any better. I knew where my heart was. It's all about love for the city, belief in the team. It frames the whole thing as this classic, feel-good hometown story. This is the kind of PR that front offices and team owners absolutely dream of. It's clean, it's simple, and it makes everyone feel good.
But, come on, this is the National Football League. It's a beautiful game, we all love it, but at the end of the day, it is a stone-cold business. And when you're talking about contracts with 9 figures, decisions are almost never made just by the heart. So you really have to ask yourself, was this more about loyalty, or was it about a cold, hard, strategic calculation? And the answer, well, it's not a simple yes or no. It actually pulls back the curtain on this incredibly fascinating chess match played by both the player and the team, where millions of dollars and the entire future of a franchise were hanging in the balance. Okay, so to really understand what happened here, let's start by looking at this whole thing from Alec Pierce's point of view. It is so important to get this straight. This was not a passive decision. This wasn't a situation where the Colts just slid an offer across the table and he said, okay, sounds good. No. This was an active, deliberate choice that was driven by a really clear set of priorities that went way, way beyond just the final dollar amount. And here it is. This is the one fact that just completely shatters that simple hometown discount story. 4 other NFL teams were ready to pay him more money than the Colts. And we're not talking about casual phone calls. We're talking about concrete, more lucrative offers on the table. So Pierce and his agent looked at contracts with bigger numbers, more guaranteed cash, and they consciously, actively said no thanks. So that begs the question, if it wasn't about getting every single last dollar, then what on earth was it really about?
Well, if you were listening closely, Alec Pierce told us himself. He laid out his entire checklist for what mattered to him at this point in his career. And look what's right there at the top of the list: quarterback play and stability. Think about it. For a wide receiver, and especially for a deep threat guy like Pierce, whose entire game is built on big plays downfield, your success, your stats, your legacy, it's all tied directly to the guy throwing you the football. For him, this wasn't just a minor detail. It was everything.
And you can see why when you look at the other teams that were chasing him. Let's just go down the list. The New England Patriots. They were about to hand the keys to the entire franchise to a rookie, Drake May. Huge potential for sure, but a total unknown. What about the San Francisco 49ers? An absolutely elite Super Bowl-ready roster, but they were still keeping a very close eye on Brock Purdy's recovery from a major injury. The Las Vegas Raiders? They were hitting the reset button. A whole new coaching staff, a brand new offensive scheme to learn, total uncertainty. And the Los Angeles Chargers? You've got a superstar in Justin Herbert, but they're constantly managing his health concerns. Every single one of those teams, even with more money to offer, had a gigantic question mark at the single most important position on the field. And then you look at the Colts. They had just made the move to secure their starter, Daniel Jones. For Pierce, the choice became crystal clear. Do I take a gamble on a slightly bigger paycheck that's tied to a really unstable situation, or do I take a still massive, life-altering payday that comes with the one thing I want more than anything else, stability?
Okay, so that's Alec Pierce's side of the chessboard. We get it. But he was only one piece of the puzzle. The Indianapolis Colts weren't just sitting back and waiting for things to happen. Oh no. They were in the middle of executing a very detailed, multi-step master plan. And in that plan, signing Alec Pierce wasn't the first move. It wasn't even the main move. It was the calculated, deliberate final piece of a much larger and honestly, much riskier puzzle. The Colts' whole offseason came down to this 3-step sequence. It's like lining up dominoes. You simply cannot get to step 3 without perfectly executing steps 1 and 2 first. It just doesn't work.
First, you have to create the cash flow, the financial flexibility. Second, you have to lock down the most important piece on the board, your quarterback. And only then, once you've done both of those things, can you take that money and that guaranteed stability and use it to lock in your number one target. So let's break down exactly how they pulled this whole thing off.
Step one was the huge blockbuster trade of their former top receiver, Michael Pittman Jr., sending him over to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, this move was absolutely critical. This wasn't just about moving on from a player they liked, it was a strategic financial reset. By trading him, they instantly cleared about $24 million in cap space for the 2026 season. And here's the kicker. Pittsburgh then extended Pittman for $19 million a year. That was a full $5 million less per year than what the Colts were on the hook for. So not only did the Colts free up a ton of money, but the rest of the league basically validated their decision. This created the exact financial breathing room they needed to make their next two giant moves.
Now for step two, locking down the quarterback. And they did this using a very rare and very risky little tool called the transition tag. Now, you've probably heard of the franchise tag, right? Well, the transition tag is different. It gives the team the right to match any offer sheet the player signs with another team. But here's the huge risk. If another team throws an offer at your guy that's so big you just can't match it, you lose him. For nothing. Zero compensation, no draft picks, he's just gone. That's why it is so incredibly rare for a quarterback. In fact, this was only the second time in 30 years a QB has gotten this tag. It cost the Colts a cool $37.8 million for just one season, but it was a price they were willing to pay to guarantee Daniel Jones was their guy, providing the exact stability that Alec Pierce was looking for.
All right, so the cap space is there from the Pittman trade. The quarterback is secured with the Jones tag. The stage was finally set for the Colts to execute their final move, signing Alec Pierce. And the contract they ended up giving him didn't just make some waves around the league. It was a tsunami. It completely reset the market, shattered records, and sparked this huge debate across the entire NFL about what a top wide receiver is actually worth. $114 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. This contract didn't just make him a wealthy man. It instantly made Alec Pierce the highest-paid free agent wide receiver in the history of the National Football League. That is a staggering amount of money. And with it comes an immense amount of pressure and sky-high expectations. So let's break it down. The base value is $114 million over 4 years, but it can actually go up to $116 million if he hits certain incentives. But here's the number that players and agents really care about: the guarantees. Pierce locked down a whopping $84 million in total guarantees, with $60 million of that fully guaranteed the second he put pen to paper. To put that in perspective, this deal didn't just sneak past the old record held by Calvin Ridley, it blew it completely out of the water. This wasn't just another big deal, this was a market-altering, paradigm-shifting contract. So the multi-million-dollar question is he worth it? The naysayers, the critics, they'll immediately point to the box score and say, well, he doesn't get 100 catches a season. But here's the thing. The Colts weren't paying for volume. They were paying for elite, game-breaking, defense-altering efficiency. For 2 straight seasons, 2024 and 2025, he led the entire NFL in yards per catch. In 2025, he broke 1,000 yards on just 84 targets. Most receivers need 130, 140, sometimes even 150 targets to hit that number. That's an absolutely absurd level of efficiency. It proves that when the ball is thrown his way, he's one of the most dangerous and productive deep threats in the entire league. So how do the so-called experts grade this whole thing? Well, it really depends on which side of the table you're sitting on. For Alec Pierce, it's an undeniable A+. I mean, he got a history-making contract, secured generational wealth for his family, and he gets to stay in an offense he's already great in with a quarterback he trusts. It's a grand slam for the player. For the Colts, though, the grade is a little more shaky. It's more like a B-. It's a huge calculated risk. They are betting that Pierce can grow from being an elite deep threat into a true do-it-all number 1 receiver. And they're betting that Daniel Jones stays healthy and productive. A lot of things have to go right for this contract to look like a win for the team down the line. But here's where this story gets even bigger. Beyond just the Colts and Alec Pierce, this contract has sent shockwaves across the entire league landscape. It signals a fundamental shift in how elite wide receivers are valued. And in doing so, it's basically created an entirely new metric, a new line item in contract negotiations that every agent and GM is going to have to deal with from now on.
What this deal did was create and, for the first time, actually put a price tag on a new concept, the QB stability premium. It's this idea that having a reliable, established quarterback is so incredibly valuable to a receiver's production that it adds real, tangible dollars to their contract value. And the estimate right now is that it's worth somewhere around $3 to $4 million per year. Alec Pierce's contract is the first big test case for this. His agent basically went to the Colts and said, look, the certainty of playing with Daniel Jones versus the chaos somewhere else, that's worth a premium. And the Colts agreed, and they paid up.
What this really signals is a potential end to the old way of thinking. For years, it was all about raw numbers: how many targets, how many receptions, how many yards. This deal proves the market has shifted. Now, it's all about context. How efficient are you with the chances you get? Do you score touchdowns? And the biggest question of all, who is throwing you the football? That context, which used to be just a talking point for TV analysts, now has a multi-million-dollar price tag attached to it.
And right when you think you've got this whole complicated story figured out, here comes the final, dangerous twist. The entire foundation of this huge, multi-year strategy, the very stability that the Colts just paid a massive premium for, well, right now it's all hinging on one massive, unresolved, and very time-sensitive problem.
You gotta remember, Daniel Jones was only locked in for 1 year on that $37.8 million transition tag. His team is reportedly looking for a long-term deal around $50 million a year, which would put him up there with the top QBs in the league. The Colts' first offer, though, was apparently way down, closer to $33.5 million a year. Folks, that is a massive, massive gap to close in a negotiation, and they only have until the league's deadline of July 15th to get a long-term deal signed. The clock is ticking, and it is ticking loudly.
The Colts are betting their entire future. We're talking about $67 million of their 2026 cap space, now tied up in just these two guys, on the health and success of this connection. But as their own painful recent history shows us, stability in the NFL can be an illusion. This is a violent game, and all it takes is one bad hit, one unlucky injury, to turn a fantastic 8-2 start into a disastrous 8-9 finish, and flip an entire season of hope completely upside down.
So that's the bottom line. The Indianapolis Colts have pushed all their chips into the middle of the table. They're betting everything on the idea that the connection between Daniel Jones and Alec Pierce is the foundation of their future. But with that July 15th deadline creeping closer and a huge negotiation still to be won, the biggest question is still out there. Was this whole thing a stroke of genius that will lead them to a championship? Or was it a monumental gamble that's about to blow up in their faces? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching this deep dive here on NFL Nexus. If you had a good time, please hit that like button and definitely subscribe for more breakdowns just like this one. And hey, one last time, if you want to support what we do, check out our coloring books. They're perfect for fans of all ages. The QR code is on the screen and the link is in the description. We'll see you next time.